All right. We should be set up and ready to rock. Well, welcome, Thinkermetrics fam. Today, thought we'd do a live session with some graph examples of glowing up some graphs, little makeovers of some real student examples of projects that my students are working on. So, thanks to the volunteers out there for providing your Tableau files that will look at the data, make some suggestions and tweaks, and look at maybe different ways to display information. So, one thing, I am not a designer, I am not just a data visualization person. All of those things are individual disciplines where people are excellent at that particular role, but I'm definitely a generalist and I like to combine all these things that we know about business, social media, video analytics, app analytics, and so many more things to create visualizations that help tell a data story that then help us ask for what we need and what we need to change to be more effective in our decisions and performance and growth throughout everything. So, welcome, y'all. We are going to try to try to critique these in a way that's uplifting and constructive. I know feedback is challenging for many of us, including myself, to receive that feedback as a gift. And if I do come across a little bit too critiquey, judgy in how we do things, please know it's coming from love, coming from wanting you to do well and improve. And you also may disagree. So a lot of these things, especially the more creative it is, there different choices to make and different environments where it would look better to do a graph in a certain way. And your audience obviously has different contexts, so you may need to explain more things if it's on a USA Today graph about the economy, or if it's the Wall Street Journal article about medical prices and data visualization had that story really well crafted in the last week, or if it's in eMarketer or The Economist, or it's on exploding topics or things like that. So today we're going to look at Google Trends data, and we're going to look at maybe some Statista data. We'll see what's in there. So this is a live reaction, so it's super exciting, not as much as listening to maybe a music video and getting a take from someone that's an expert in production and stuff like that. But we have data and we have graphs, and we can hopefully help everyone get to an even more competent level of a professional ability to communicate using data and graphs. So I do want to dial in on that permission to suck a little bit more. So, I'm a certified DJ, not very good, and have the standard of watching Alinea at the Sphere in Vegas, and then I have me. So whenever I go to learn and do that thing, knowing how bad I am compared to the standard I have to receive makes it very difficult to sort of work through that challenge at the start where you're learning new tools and you're practicing. And to give yourself a little bit of grace while you're doing that and to stick with it through that challenge, like whether you're learning how to snowboard or skateboard, or you're learning data visualization, there's that time period where you're not feeling that good at something, and it doesn't really feel great until you start clicking in on that next level of knowledge. So hopefully you will get there. Stick with it if it's a little wonky at first, especially if you're coming from a different discipline or it's a new way of thinking for you. So with that said, breathe. Take a deep breath in, out. That's the yoga teacher in me, also in yoga teacher training 300 hours this spring. And we're going to begin and share my screen to that. Sweet. Well, there's the infinite stream. So hopefully this is still working. Hopefully you can still hear me. If not, we're going to delete this and try it again. But we're going to rock this out. So let's open up Tableau. I got 4 examples here. Don't know what I'm going to see. We're going to talk through a little bit about how Tableau works, even for those of you that don't necessarily know what it is. So Tableau, or something like Power BI, are these more business function sort of data tools that are a lot more accessible than things like Python and SQL. And you're able to, manipulate, visualize the data by bringing different data sources together in kind of an organized way where you're not generally touching the underlying data source, so you can't mess it up and do select star delete in SQL. and scare the rest of your IT department. That's one of those like intern mistakes that's pretty funny on Twitter occasionally. So what we have here is Tableau, a data visualization platform. Up here on the upper left, we have all the data sources here. So I already know kind of what to expect on some of these. One thing you can check out here is rename. So tough sell on the basics here for everyone, but always, rename your data sources. Spell them correctly if you want. So CAGR. So that one looks like it's going to be Statista, which is a great website to pull statistical data that you may have access to through your university or company. And compound annual growth rate is that growth over time that we'll probably look at a little bit later. So just calling out there, you can rename these things. You'll also see in Tableau, it's got the check if the data is extracted there into a little database can there. Well, reference like that. So we've got some Google Trends data that are by region and over time for some keywords. So I'm sure we'll see all of that coming up, as well as some business data, different attributes about the data, as well as some social media data here as well from Rival IQ, one of my favorite tools. Shout out to them. They have an awesome cross-platform social media data analysis tool that has two files we really like to look at. They have a great platform with their own graphs and everything, but if you want to bring it into your own data tool like Tableau and be able to connect it to the rest of your data, which data is much more powerful when you're connecting it from all of the different data sources you have, whether that's, incoming marketing and ads to the site analytics or chat or customer service, orders and conversions and all sorts of things. So that full life cycle of how everything comes together, whatever your role is. Generally, you're not just looking at one piece of data or one platform. You want to see it together. So Rival IQ helps a lot with that. They have two things here. We have got daily values and we have the top posts in that time period. So there's a whole other video on that. Check it out on Thinkermetrics on Rival IQ. But we're just going to look at the graphs today a little bit. Just want to do a little bit of a review of Tableau here for a minute or two. So you can see over here, you have right now, we've got some ABC text strings on the top and then a divider line. It used to say dimensions and measures there below in Tableau. They removed that for minimalism, but it's really important to know that dimensions are the things that you graph data across. So you have those metrics, those measures that you'll see here below, like revenue, followers, and rates, which rates are super powerful. That helps you compare things very easily. And those are set up correctly here. So you'll see you can change the data type there. So revenue, they've got a whole number for that, but a rate, you're going to see a decimal there, obviously. So same with dimensions. They right now are set to a string. So there's like a text string for those things. You also see, we don't have one here on this piece of data, but we have date and time and date as other dimensions. So you can also graph things across time with time series graphs and stuff like that. A lot of times Tableau will bring these in incorrectly. I know the Rival IQ data tends to come in a little bit wonky. Looks like this is cleaned up pretty well though, except for a few. So we've got a good example here. And if you're not going to use it, you don't have to clean up all of these in your graphs, but like you would want to change that engagement rate to a decimal there. You can click multiple on your keyboard with shift and control like you would normally do there. Okay, I don't know. I got a PC keyboard on a Mac right now. So the shortcuts are a little bit off. Shortcuts are a great way to go really quickly though, but you can go ahead and change these before you bring them in. They might also be up here as a measure, which these are, that should be, they're in the dimensions that should be a measure. So all of these you can right click and convert to measure to bring them down so they'll graph properly. Otherwise, they'll act like a dimension, so it will make your graphs look a little wonky. All right, cool. That is a lot of the setup there. So I know it's a recap for many of you, but we'll talk a little bit more about the Tableau features as we go throughout the graphs. I'm going to use that slider there to see if I can see the whole website there since it was cut off a little bit. Try to make things so they aren't cut off. Like that's a little bit obvious, but that's one thing to talk about here. So we do have the marks tab and it is set to automatic and a bar. Bar charts, obviously one of the most, if not the most common graphs there. I'm noticing a few things here. So monthly website visits. For what is my first question. So is this looks like all of these are clothing. Maybe there's some other ones. I'm seeing a lot of clothing and then StockX and some others. So it's probably all of them in this list of different categories and businesses. I'm going to bring in category here. They are all in category fashion apparel. Okay. So maybe they all are, except for, I guess, StockX is okay. Yeah. All right. So they're all fashion apparel. That's good to know. Cool. I'm trying to figure out what's here. We have some other things we can bring in. So one thing to think about too is there's a lot of different ways how to display these things. What makes it easiest for the user? What are you trying to say? So basically, these are all fashion category. So fashion and apparel. So cool. So we don't really need category on there since it's the only thing. I would put that in the title here. And in Tableau, you can do, actually, let's do it this way. So whatever you put in here in the tab and edit it will come up here automatically in Tableau. So they have that sheet name thing. It pulls in whatever is there. You don't have to have it there, but I highly recommend it. And then we can put fashion and apparel as the subtitle. Make it maybe a little bit smaller so it's like a subtitle look, and you could even bold, change colors, all sorts of stuff like that, and click apply. So now you have monthly website, and we can put visits back in there. It's just showing you how the tab works, and we've got that. So I would say monthly websites by fashion and apparel, maybe by category. So even though it says industry, I don't really like the name for it. That was the one I did, but hey, so we've got that, and we've got the company, we have the website there instead of the company name. So that's a choice, which could be good, could be not. So you can see what you want to do instead. Maybe it's a little bit cleaner to have the name of the company. I think it probably is. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and duplicate this and see. I'm going to keep that one the way it is. And remember, you can sort descending and ascending with these little arrows in the bar up there. And so it's going to do that within that category. So I'm going to do descending there. And like without that, you can see StockX is the top. With it, it's like that. So maybe we do a version. Oops, there we go. We do a version of both. I'm going to do it without industry there. And I would rename these later. Oh, I dropped industry into color, but that is actually something I wanted to do anyway. So that is actually pretty cool. You can do a lot of fun things with color to make it easier for the user. I mean, the rule generally like 3 to 5 colors versus there's a lot here, and it's making it a little bit difficult, although you could probably group these things together and reduce that. So you could do shift on your keyboard, and there's a little paper clip there, and you can paper clip it, and then you can edit these groups and put them together. So maybe these are all resale and marketplace, regardless of sneaker or not. And then you can still edit that group and put sustainable together, sustainable fashion accessories, something like that. And your fashion e-com, fashion retail, I feel like that's all the same. Yeah. And rename it because it's just going to squish them all together. So just put fashion e-commerce. It's probably all in that same area. Maybe some don't have e-commerce. I don't know. You have to talk through all these things with your categories on what makes sense for you and on what is clear for the user. But apparel, basics, footwear. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. At least it lowered that a little bit on the colors. What I am noticing is there are a lot of labels here, and there is an axis. So you already also say monthly website visits in the title. Like I would right click, show header, turn off, because you have them there. So that's one option. And on the label here, we have show all. So there's show none, there's show all, there's show min and max. And you can also just do the max because like maybe the minimum's just not relevant. And there you go. You got 80,000 on the top. Maybe you could click that label button and that marks tab in the middle. You can make that bold. You can do all sorts of stuff with the layout, or do you want it closer to the name there? One principle in data too is like trying to make sure your eyes aren't like bouncing across the screen a lot, looking for where it's connected to. So, labels and legends, like, is it close to where their eyes already are to make them do less work and be able to really see where the number connects to the dimension that you're talking about? So maybe to the left, maybe to the right, just something to experiment and see with your users as well. So that's one way to do it. We're going to put it back on the right. You can also click the font where we were changing it to bold. You could do different fonts. I know everyone likes to stick to the defaults, and we will try to get out of that and try to choose things intentionally for the branding guides of the companies we're talking about, for the publications that we're in, or just to mix it up a little bit from the default. But another thing you can do on the font here is match the mark color. That's kind of fun too if there's multiple colors. So this is probably too many for all of them. We have it on min-max, but like you can see it a little bit better here. This is really helpful too when you're doing a dot chart. So we'll probably get to that later, but let's go with min-max and not the min. All right, so website visits by category for fashion and apparel. So now we know what we're looking at. You could even then do a subtitle that says like a key takeaway or a question, like who leads in website visits across fashion and apparel by visits. Cool. So when you do that too, like, now the user is primed. So instead of someone trying to do all this math in their head, like you've seen the meme with like Taylor Swift and there's like all the equations up there, this helps them out. So like I read the title and then I'm like, oh, who does? And this one's really obvious, but like the question is then leading them to the thing that you want to see the proof for in the graph, versus having them try to do all this infinite analysis work when you just want them to see the graph and the point you're trying to make. So let's check out some other stuff. So, cool. This one works as well. I mean, you could do, we've got industry there on color, which is category. Maybe it mixes it up a little bit. Maybe you want all of them to be different colors. Maybe you're making them all, let's make them all like all gray except for footwear. Maybe we're talking about footwear. This one's Revolve, so it's not footwear, but you get the idea. So Revolve's probably more, it's probably kind of more general. But anyway, just to show you how it looks, we'll do that. So maybe the point is you want them to see all the different categories, and then you want to have them focus on one. You can do that with groups. You could do that with sets. You can do that just by changing the color here in the color marks tab as well. And I guess that's a good place to mention you can choose not the default. So highly recommend getting off that default Tableau set of colors. There's at least a few more here, and you can go custom as well. But you can assign that palette by like clicking it there, and you can individually change those. So maybe basics you want green, maybe fashion you want blue, and I don't know. So you can change it around to what makes sense for you. Obviously, you're probably going to want to use your set brand guidelines in your design system setup. So that's one thing you can do that there with color. You can also lower that opacity so it's not as harsh, and you can add borders. It's already got one there, but you can try some different things to see whatever works for the user. Borders are kind of nice. Gives a little definition a lot of times. Another thing too, so in this one, we removed that label there because we already had what the variable was in the title, and we already had the label. So, it depends on how much you want to show on the screen, how minimal you want it is, but generally you want to kind of clean up things that are duplicative. So if it's saying website visits 7 times on your graph, probably don't need to say that. Maybe it's twice, maybe sometimes you do also need to see it in the axis as well, just depending on your preference, but something to think about. You can double click on this axis here, and right now it says monthly website visits. Monthly website visits is in the title. Maybe you do have it down here, but maybe you just say visits since it's a little bit cleaner. Also, when you double click it here, right now it's just automatic. It's doing that whole span of data that they have from 0 to 90 million. You do have to be careful, obviously, with axes. That's kind of one of the more manipulative things that people do in data, especially in newspapers and other things that people often call them out on. But you could start it later. So like maybe the axis starts at 500,000. But in this case, this is fine. But just know you can change it there. Cool. That looks fine. What else can we do? All right, here, another thing you can do, there's an analytics tab next to the data tab. You can drop an average line in. So if you have a filter and other things, like you may want the average for the whole data set. And so that'd be the table. And then the pane would just be like what you see here on the screen and what the average is. So the average here is 9.9 million. You can right click on that and there's all sorts of stuff you can do. Here on the left, you can change what the line looks like. You can have simple line, you can have a thicker line, all sorts of things. You can change the formatting of a number, whether it has a number on the line or not, all sorts of stuff. You can also like fill below. So like maybe below average, like you want to make it super obvious that that's there, or the reverse as well. So okay, click it there to highlight again. So there's fill above and fill below. So maybe fill above like that, fill below. So lots of formatting options, but just something to think about there. And you can change, right now it's the average, maybe it's the median there. So that's something you can think about. Cool. All right, so looking at more average. So there you go. You got an axis with some negatives as well. So first time we're seeing that here. You got a little blue, or a green outline, and you've got some numbers. So those are, let's check out the numbers here. And they're colored by the business model, so business consumer. So that's a great way to look at this data too, because those are very different types of businesses in every way, on what you would do, how much they would grow, all that kind of thing. So we've got the growth in websites. So that's really interesting. So even, if it's a small company, but it's growing really fast versus a large company that's mostly scaled and growing just a little bit. So you've got like Allbirds in the news lately, not for great reasons, but the darling of San Francisco and everyone wearing those a few years ago to not only not growing, but shrinking in their website visit growth. So that's probably why they ended up where they were. That's a good story. That's interesting. So that would actually be a good data story point to explore as you would give a presentation with this kind of data. Cool. So we do have labels on all of these, and we also have the left on the label. Let's see. What could we do that would be fun here? Actually, let's put it back on. Let's go to the data, and we have sum of website growth. So, I mean, it'd really be an average, but there's only one or data point here. So sum versus average, which we'll talk about more, doesn't really matter. But this is where you can change it in there. Let's right click on that and click format. So right now it is set to automatic. You can click through these and see what it does. So this is on the, this is on the axis. So I'll put dollar signs. It's not a dollar sign. It is a percentage, and you can choose the numbers. So it looks like it's already in percentage form. So it's in the decimal wise, doesn't need to be changed to that. And we have percent in the axis. So for the pane, which is in here in the label, you've got different spaces for all of this. So you don't need to do percentage here. If you did have the like 0.242, you would want that. It's in automatic though. And so that's going to have that trailing 0. That's an extra number. I probably wouldn't have that there unless this was currency and you wanted like $5.50. So I would probably change that to standard, or custom. You can reduce the decimal places to 1 there. So that's something you could do there. All right, and that's good. It's sorted, descending, so you can see quickly that way. One thing you can test out as well, swap rows and columns, see what works best for your viewers. So like here, I'm kind of doing a head quarter turn or 90-degree turn there. I kind of like it better this way, but it's up to you. Another thing is, I know those are companies. I don't need to see the column header there, so you can right click and hide that, and that's great. Cool. So again, I would probably change the title here for fashion apparel. E-commerce is probably what this was. So I would look at wherever you pulled the data from and see if it has a way you could further refine it, so people are like website visits of which ones were included, like what made them fit that criteria to be included, so you know what it is. Okay, cool. We have some data from Statista. We have retail e-commerce sales, compound annual growth rates by country. And okay, so here we go. All right, let's just say that's a lot in the thing of the tab, and then it didn't use it to pull it up here with the sheet thing, which is cool. That's how we're learning, like at the start. People don't realize you can change that. So we will go ahead and do this the right way. So let's call this retail e-commerce sales by country. And I'm gonna do this insert up here. So insert, you can pull anything that you have in the marks tab and in the columns and rows into here, and you can drag whatever's in your data source up here. So even if it's not in your graph directly, you could drop it into detail or tooltip, and it should be available here. So we are going to do sheet name, which is that. So that'll bring back what we had from the tab. And if you wanted to add, let's see, what was that? 2020, hold on, the date, 2025 to 2030. So I'm just Command Z, Command Y, your good old undo, redo there. So that's why I can do that quickly. Next tab, and you say, was that 2025 to 2030? Already forgot. There you go. Great memory. Let's do that. Let's shrink that a little bit. And I would also put source Statista, wherever it came from, and the details about that. Like, we don't have to go MLA like citation level, but that's a good one to have a source for. And you have CAGR there. I would say so you can work with the formatting, whatever works for you. I would definitely, if you've got a acronym, highly recommend explaining what it is. Even if your audience really knows what it is, in most cases, you don't know where your graphs and documents are going throughout an entire company and the world, and not everyone knows the same acronyms. And not only that, they mean things across different industries and functions. So I think it is a good idea to always explain. I also think when people are new and learning, maybe you're a marketer that like hasn't done as many like financial type documents, maybe CAGR is new to you. So it is for many of us. And I think it's just a good service to do humanity by explaining it the first time you see it. And then maybe in like subsequent graphs and like a presentation, you don't necessarily need to always do that. But I think it's a good principle to keep that going. So cool. We've got product category retail. So kind of the same deal. Probably won't go through all of these since they are similar. But that is interesting. We can just explore different ways to do this. So again, right click and duplicate. Highly recommend just trying different things out. This data is pretty simple. It's just country and growth rates. And you could do a map with your location data that was automatically generated. I think we'll be getting to that a little bit later. But that is something you can do. Remember, in Tableau, we also have the Show Me tab, so you could change it to a map. I'm a little nervous to do that right now. Let's see if we can pull it in there, but hey, it worked. So there you go. That's another way to look at the data by growth rate, so you can see really at a glance. I mean, one of the great things about data visualization is you've got these boring tables of data, and in like a split second, you can see something that's interesting. So obviously developing markets are probably going to be developing quickly. So we've got some interesting pieces there, and that helps inform a lot of decisions. So like, how much do you want to invest in a company that, or in a country that's not growing that quickly? Maybe if you can get more market share from someone else, but maybe not. But it definitely changes what your strategy would be. So cool. We've got that. In a second, we know that India and China are growing really fast in retail e-commerce. So very cool with that version of this. And that was coming from the bar chart, which here you see India and Japan at the top, but like, it depends on what view you want to see. You could do that. You could also do one of these. And so this is why I'd say this isn't a great one for this, and a really bad one for a pie chart, because it doesn't make sense. So maybe I'll go over that really quick. So pie charts, which is really tiny in Tableau there, unless you click entire view, or you can click Command Shift B to make them larger. But because these slices are all the same, which one, making a pie chart of a rate doesn't make sense anyway, because you're like, you know, having someone get a 90% on an assignment and a like 85% on an assignment, you wouldn't add those together. So it's better for the absolute rates, but you can see how these are all very close together. So that's not really showing that actually India was a lot more than those others. The circles are just hard to determine that with our human brains when they're not that far off. So the map or the bar chart looks pretty good for this. Cool. Revenue has an E, but E boy, E. All right. Got kind of the same ones there, but we do have something we can play with a little bit. We've got the company name and the country all bunched together in one. So in either Tableau or Excel, there's some sort of a split function. So country, it's actually listed as country instead of company. Interesting. And it figured out country with the other stuff and parentheses. Anyway, we're going to do transform custom split. In Excel, it's text to columns. And so I'm going to do a custom split there. Our separator, you're going to need to make it the left parentheses. If you made it the space, it would cut the company there. And we really only need 2 columns. So you'll have the company name will be the first one, and anything after the left parenthesis will be the second one. So you can then rename these. It's just going to call them split 1 and 2. And that first one is company. And the second one is country, except for country already exists on there. So country name. I'm surprised Tableau figured out the first one, but good for them on that. So instead of graphing by that mixed one there, you can do country name. And this one needs to be an average. So that should change it, because it's adding up the different rates in the country, and that doesn't make sense. So you want to see the average of the companies within. Otherwise, countries with fewer companies, if that makes sense. So let me just throw the country. Oh, wait, we've got company and country. Actually, we still have a parentheses there on that one. So I'm going to fix that by splitting that again. There's probably a better way to do that, but we're going to go. I don't know if that's going to work, but let's see what happens. Doing things on live. What are you going to do with that? Okay, let's see. Looks good. So split 1 there, and we don't need split 2, I don't think, because that's just the parentheses. We're going to call that Yeah, I'm gonna get creative here. Okay, cool. So again, we can clean it up a little bit like that. Now you have country and company. So a lot of different ways you could look at that. So this is the global brands revenue by country, and it's average. So there's so many ways we could look at this. We could duplicate it a few times. You could make company color, and you can see who's making that up. That doesn't quite make sense like that. So maybe, let's see, we've got it just by company. We have it with country. Yeah. And we could try flipping it around as well too. I actually kind of like it better flip this way for this one. Okay, little arrows, Tableau's little arrows. Cool. And you could do the country graph. Not growing fast in the UK. There you go. We can talk about maps more later, but that is the default. Of course, if you click maps at the top of Tableau, you can change all sorts of different features. A little dark mode for y'all out there that are dark mode fans. The general public isn't always, but in the tech crowd, especially late at night, that's a great one. There's also the more satellite views and all sorts of other stuff there. And this data is really clean, like on the names of countries and everything. But, you know, if you're in Versailles, Ohio, or Versailles, France, maybe it picked up on that incorrectly. So you might want to fix that, you know, Lima, Peru, or Lima, Ohio. I don't know what other ones, but that has happened. So make sure data is clean and makes sense for the locations that you have. A lot of different options and maps, a lot of different layers and other stuff. You can choose all sorts of things there. So if it was on streets, you can choose, like, do you want the cities listed or not? This is just country data, but there's a lot of options where, like, we do have cities listed, even though we're just looking at countries. That's probably too much to have so many cities listed there, but maybe you want to see a little bit of the other lines. So all your choices. You can click these different styles, try different things, sometimes have points of interest and other stuff. So more to come on maps, but we're gonna undo that probably. Although, so this is another thing to talk about too. When you're giving a presentation, and actually, if you see a lot of TED Talks, they'll have like 50 slides of what is just a handful of graphs, but you're looking at things overall. You're looking at different comparisons. So maybe it's like North America versus Asia versus Europe. And instead of having like a giant graph with everything very tiny, you're just like, you know, clicking in, zooming in, drilling down to this comparison. So maybe I was talking about North America versus Asia, but then I was like, here's Europe, here's where Germany is 6.33 and the UK is -4. So if I was going to make a recommendation on investing in e-commerce, I would say maybe for the European division, we would focus there. So just something to think about. And we'll move on to some social media data. So we've got a few things here. We have TikTok engagement per post with a sideline thing and the dates there. Okay, so here's one where we've got the company name here. I'm going to see if I can drop that to color instead. Flip this around. That to me is a lot easier to see. We've also got duplicated TikTok engagement per post. So this is kind of in the context of a landscape of looking at your competitors of just 4. I can't keep my chair around the desk. There we go. We want to be able to see these really quickly on who's comparing versus the others in that small competitive set. And especially over time series, usually really good to look at that. So either a bar chart or a line chart should look pretty decent here. So this is a stacked bar, so you can see the engagement per post quickly. and you can see like very fast, like, so obviously Aloe is getting the most TikTok engagement per post, and particularly on that specific day on March 5th of this year, getting 35,000. So that's a great segue too to talk about focusing on things that are, very big, like large outliers, something that's very interesting. And so if you had this graph and you didn't have that question ready to answer on what did they post on March 5th, 2026, obviously an executive, your manager, whoever is looking at this data is going to be like, what happened on that date? So I wouldn't have the like surprised look on your face when someone asks you that. Instead, prep for it. Even if you just have this graph and you don't do another one or you don't label it, I would be ready to answer that. Have it in appendix with another graph as well. So we do have one label there. So we have labels there. Cool. So you can do labels. In this one, I might even right click. You can just do that one. So you can say always show that label. Or in this case, because I probably want to talk about that, you can annotate that. And it gives you the default thing with the variables there. You can edit that. You don't have to have what's before and after it, those little carrots around things. You can also make it sound more human. So you could say on date, copy and paste around that, on date, company name, had the number. I'm just going to say engagements per post. Well, you could say engagements or engagements per post to kind of play with. We have it here, there, and there now. So maybe I don't have that on the axis. Maybe I don't have it in the title. So we can say okay. And the title was retyped again, so you can use the sheet name instead there. And in this case, it'll be Feb 28 to April 1. So a lot of times you'll be doing these as like quarterly business reviews or monthly updates where your social media team or your third-party vendors are doing this that do the analysis, or your agency or something like that. We can change that. And I didn't really like the bar. I like the line better. So we can do that. There are different setups here. You could do the area chart so you can see that a little bit better. You could probably see that a lot better on YouTube. And you can see that fill out there. So obviously we can change these colors. The opacity was already a little bit lower. So for these, you're probably going to want to choose the brand name for those. So I don't know what all their brand guidelines are, but you can look them up and check that out. I know those are dates. I don't need that to be told to me, so I'm going to delete that. And here's our annotation now. You can format that. You can give it a different color. You can add a border. You can add rounded corners, and you can make it bigger and that sort of thing. So okay. And you can change all sorts of stuff. And the line has even a thing where you can have a little arrow, so it tells the eye where to go. So that's something that might work for you. Also, you can right click on the background for these things. We're talking about dark mode in the maps, but you can also add a worksheet background like that. So it depends on your branding and everything you want to do. Obviously, you want to avoid things being too busy. You want to make sure contrast is good and that it's easy for accessibility from that point, which is another good thing to discuss as well in color. Obviously, a lot of people are colorblind, and many on my projects, which is really funny. In project management, like the stoplight of red, green, yellow is a really common status indicator. And obviously that's super problematic with red and green being able to be seen in a very distinct way, not as much by certain people. So you want to make sure that you are able to communicate well with your data and are thinking through things like that for sure. But yeah, we could change those around if you want, but let's stick with that and keep going. Oh, I guess you could click on, so there's some null data there, like maybe the data wasn't cleaned up as well. You can just filter that out and get rid of that thing there. Should go away. Why is it not going away? Hide indicator. There you go. Right click and hide indicator on that. All right, this one wasn't sorted. We can do descending and see that. You can click this to make this a lot bigger. It's a very tiny thing. So best views TikTok versus YouTube. What is best views TikTok versus YouTube? That sounds like a calculation. Let's see what the calculation is. We've got the sum of TikTok views and YouTube post views. So that was obviously created by taking those two variables and then putting them in that. So we're saying best views. I would probably rename that to, I think I know where that's coming from because it was like the best way of viewing total views, but let's just call it combined TikTok YouTube views. So that's the new name for that, which it automatically put in the axis. I'm actually going to delete that, but copy it, put it in. There's an exclamation point in the tab. There we go. We're going to put that in there. I'm going to change this to have that sheet name. And we have the companies here. You know, this one actually might be okay to do. Let's see what we got. There we go. All right, maybe this packed bubble chart, as Tableau calls it, would work in this case. However, we know it's bigger, which is fine. So you could do it like that, but I'm going to duplicate that. Click Command on my keyboard or Control on a PC, and you can drop that number to the label also. So if I'm going to undo that. If I move that number to the label and it's not there, I just messed up the whole thing. When you drag and drop, it'll move it from where it was to where it's going. So it'll not be where it used to be. But if you do Command on your keyboard or Control on your keyboard, you can drop it in there and have it both where it was and where it's going. So I'm also going to hit that label, hit the text there, and you can make, the company bold. You can make size different. Maybe you want to make it giant for the number because you want them to focus on it. And that is a huge box for Revolve. Maybe even make it bigger. Sweet. But the bigger you get, obviously the smaller boxes you won't be able to see. So how big do you want to go where it's relevant to the things you want to talk about? If you're showing it in Tableau or in a viewer that's interactive, you could obviously hover over it, and that's a good discussion to talk about the tooltips. So there's labels that we're talking about over here, and that's the number there. And then there's also annotations, which we talked about with the one that we did there. So we got the annotations, and now we're looking at the tooltip, which is the hover. So it looks like that. You can edit that however you want as well. So like we were talking about making it more human sounding with company, had combined views. So now we have kind of a human sentence there. So when I hover over it, it's a little bit easier to read as a human. So that's kind of fun. So that smaller one, maybe I talk about Reformation and I wanted to see that. That's a great way to do it. And again, for tooltips and labels, if there's something on here that we didn't graph, like, okay, we've got combined views, maybe we want to add something on there like number of TikTok posts. So just the count of them. I'm going to add that to the tooltip. And when I go into tooltip, now I can insert the sum of the TikTok posts. Yeah, a little human style. So cool. So they had a ton of combined views. They posted on TikTok 104. Reformation only posted on TikTok 4 times. So 100 more posts by Revolve. So no surprise that they're getting more views by posting more content. So just adds a little bit more to the story. If you have another data piece that connects it to there that is not already on there, so that adds to that a little bit. I would also probably say combined views, like who dominates the 2 leading platforms for Gen Z. Something like that could be a like subtitle. So subtitle, maybe I'll just write that. You can change it to something else. Who dominates leading social video platforms. Depends on what you describe as leading, which group leading, but like define that. That's just a start, just an idea to get a subtitle out there to help prime the viewer a little bit. So cool. We got a lot more to go here. I don't know if we're going to get through all these. I want to get through 4 of the different graphs. Here we've got the top landscape post from Rival IQ, so you can see the actual post text. So that gives us a little bit more of just seeing a dot on the screen. We can see this. It's got a highlight table, one of those heat map sort of deals, so you can see that are standouts. So we got Aloe. There you go. That was probably the one we were looking at from before date here, but I'm guessing 1.8 million views for behind the scenes at their brand activation at Paris Fashion Week. Sounds fun. I'll have to check out that video, but we've also got Revolve getting 8.8 million views for Bella Hadid. Yeah, that explains it. Okay, cool. So, but it's really interesting because you can see all these blue ones that are like very kind of distinct from the brighter red color there. A lot of text on the screen, obviously, but this may be one of those things where you use this as like a reference doc and that sort of thing. You could also play around with moving the channel and message around. So now it's organized by platform, which you could then also choose to filter out. So maybe let's do it this way. I'm going to have channel listed there. I'm also going to drop it on filter, and I'm going to say, forget Facebook, who cares? Tired of it. And go from there. Also, I know that's a company. So we just have TikTok and YouTube right here. So you can choose if you want to look at just the messages. So it depends on what you want to say. Like if you want to sort this and see the top ones a little more easily. Cool. So that helped a lot. So now I can see YouTube had the most with the 8.8 and Aloe there. So I don't even have to look at the rest. I would also, we already have a filter there on video views. Look at the screen. There's the classic above the fold and below the fold. Maybe 30,000 is what we should filter on. So video views is there. Can change that to 3123 and click OK. So now it's just that. So got the applause and views is one way to say that. Let's say like top posts. It's basically March was the end of February to early April. By company or competitors in this case. Again, we have the sheet name, can pull that in there, and by company and by channel, YouTube and TikTok. So cool. Boom. All right. So that's one way to do it really quickly. Let's see if they ended up doing the applause there already. So this one's views. And we're going there to a dot chart, but you could do this one just like that one as well by clicking this and then going to the dot chart. So it swapped that just to the uniqueness is the message. So you'll see that as the detail tab. If I take that off, then it's just going to do a summary of the total views by each platform. So it depends on what you want to show. If you want to show that of the competitive set, where is all of that coming from? You can even make that a pie chart. So you can see YouTube is huge for Revolve and pretty much not present for the others really quickly. So there's just a lot of different ways to show that. You could do that with one of these as well. So just depends on what you want to do. I really recommend experimenting. So the thing I wanted to point out here too is like this is now by channel the total sum views, but we had on there that post message as a dimension. So whatever it's unique that you have for your key and database type thinking, could be your social security number, your student number, your ID number, your company ID. But in this case, we don't want to look just at the company. You want the actual post, which I forgot what they called post. Is it message on this one? So it's a little bit different. Sometimes it's message, sometimes it's caption. It is message here. So I'm going to drop message onto details. So even if you don't have the message here, it should be able to be unique, but now you have multiple. So see, each message is in there, which is not easy to see in this, but you can see it in the other views. Let's see, maybe we drop company name here and maybe channels color. Oops, there we go. Channel to color. So they're all pretty squished in there. What else could we do? I think that's why probably date does look a little bit better since you're going to have a lot of really close ones there. One thing to think about too is outliers. So that Revolve one's going to squish everything else. So you could do a duplicate of this and then right click that to exclude it. And now you've got a lot more of a tighter set of video views for each company. But I think for this one, we'll probably go back to what we had originally there, but sorted. And then we'll go on to the Instagram applause. And did see the background here. So here we go. Again, you want applause spelled that way. It's a losing battle with the next generation. We have all sorts of the annotation set up here, which this is totally fine. In a presentation, I would duplicate this and then just do one at a time, or maybe you're comparing two different ones, so it's just two at a time. Probably more than three is a lot. Although if you only had one doc and this is a printout and it's like big enough to see, this could be totally fine. And you can just talk through the different pieces, maybe laser pointer it. I don't know if anyone does that anymore. But we've got the default colors here. Those drive me nuts. So let's change that to something else. Later, you should probably be choosing the brand colors, but we're going to try to mix it up there. Do something different. Cool. One thing that actually is pretty good with this on the color, on that opacity being lower for these where they're clustered, is the overlap looks a little bit better, and you can see kind of the crossover. So I do really recommend that for these kind of like dot charts. Helps it be a little neater to see. And this is Instagram applause for March 2026 for the fashion competitive set there. So you may have a bunch of these in a dashboard, and so you don't necessarily need that in every single title, but the dashboard should show the context of these by the company, the category, the industry, whatever it might be. But cool, this one looks pretty good. I probably reformation. So you've got channel, you've got brand, you got posted. I don't think you need channel because Instagram is at the top. Brand, we know what it is. We know what a date is. If you wanted to say, let's see what we got. I'll put that quotes maybe on that date and received. So I don't know. Oh, Haley Bieber. There you go. So we've got a decent graph there, and just know you can change whatever you want. Make sure it's minimal and clear, and you're using the user's attention pretty well. So again, you could change the title, you could change the axes. We know it's applause, so we know 30 and everything there. We even have labels, so the axes titles aren't necessary, and that's data again. So a lot of the same theme there. So cool. We've got another one on audience. And I have in the legend over here the numbers, but there's no numbers over here, which may or may not be fine. It's kind of easy, even without numbers, just to tell with this size of the pie chart is the actual audience, not just the slice here. So that shows you really quickly the weight of Revolve there compared to Aritzia and by platform too. So that's a nice quick way to see that's non-existent on Facebook, or the data's not there too. That may be a thing. I would double check to see if the data's there, or if you even want to cover it. Maybe it's something you don't want to talk about at all. Maybe it's something where you're like, hey, Revolve is on Facebook. They aren't. We've got the extra team. Do you want to repurpose content or not? There's so many different things you could talk about. You don't have to talk about everything. So maybe you are just continuing on that thread of only doing Instagram and TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. So maybe just right click those. I clicked exclude. So now we're only talking about Facebook. So there's exclude or keep only. So you could say keep only and have those. And then you could right click, duplicate. Maybe you're only talking about Instagram for a graph there. So that's one way to do it. Maybe I do a version of this, duplicate it. So we're talking about audience and company and channel. So maybe forget about channel. We're doing all channels. And we're going to get rid of post type regardless of type. And let's make this a pie again. I don't want post type. I want company post type. And there we go. Drop company into label, make this a whole lot bigger, add the audience to the label, change the label, bold that thing, or make it so one of them is bold. You don't want to get bold fatigue. It's kind of like caps fatigue. So no cap. We got the opacity there, maybe a border. So that's pretty nice. You can also sort pie charts as well. I do recommend that so that those closer ones are easier to sort out as well. So that is the audience cross-platform. So that's kind of a nice, what's your impact overall, regardless of whatever platform you're on. So that's a nice view that you might want to add on there. Cool. There's a lot here to go through. We've been working hard on the data. So there's Google Trends data, there's Revel IQ social data, there's statistical data and some business data that we have in there. We're moving on to the Google Trends data. So Google has been amazing over the last few decades on offering trends.google.com to everyone. They have an update in the UI right now that I do not like. I like the classic Explorer that has a little bit better way of doing maps, but maybe I'm missing how to do it in the new one. So I'm going to give that a shot later, but everyone's been checking out search interest. So to recap, Google has us all search for different things that then display ads in a increasing amount on page one. But we have search interest. Man, everyone spells that right, wrong like that. Okay, search interest. So what is search interest? It's going to be a number 0 to 100 that shows the relative popularity of the term. So if you just did one term, so like the example we use is like iced coffee, and then you have this like massive spike to 100 in July. But if you did iced coffee as one term that people are searching for, and hot chocolate as a different term to compare to, hot chocolate spikes even more than iced coffee spikes in December. So in December, you would get a 100 score for hot chocolate and an 82 for iced coffee, even though on the graph where it's alone, it would be 100. So it's often mistaken as search volume. It is not volume at all. It is just a way to compare something. So with that said, we have search terms here. And to take a step back, when you're searching for something, there's a lot going on, but different terms show up in ways that are specific to what we're trying to look at and not. So like we've got dress, sale, sets, and shoes in the US. So those are really generic terms, and that's going to be really hard to get clean data on like what a trend might be. Like could be sales for chemical equipment, not fashion. So I would say like fashion sale would be a lot more relevant to this, and sets, like sets are in math, like think that is a little bit generic also. And shoes, are these like industrial shoes? Are they jellies? Are they Crocs, Uggs, or Tevas? I don't know. So we do see that there. Also, search term, this has that United States thing. You could transform and custom split it. I would rerun this with different data. I wouldn't use these terms. They don't seem to have a ton of value because they're too generic. But at the very least, you could split this out and put the term here as the color instead. And then you don't have the US stuff. I would put US search interests fashion terms. I would definitely change what terms they would. So I'd go ahead and rerun that, but you got the practice making the graph, and you can see over time what the trends are. Looks like sales people are searching less on. I think, man, I'd be searching way more sales, but those are the things you can discover. Again, too, we're talking about summing things, and we've got the different terms. We've got a graph here with the individual terms. So maybe let's just do shoes so we can zoom in a little bit better. We've got the graph there. And you can see pretty quickly, Illinois has the 0.24 search interest spelled like that. I don't know if that's abbreviation, but let's go with search interest. And you can, of course, command on your keyboard, control, drop it on there. You can choose, like we did before, to do the min and max, maybe just the max, maybe the min. And of course, you can right click on wherever that is, formats, and make it a little bit more readable. You can make it bold, that kind of thing. You can also, I mean, I hope you know your states. It has a region on here, but you can also add that there. Maybe you take away some of the state lines, but you have that listed, all your calls. So I'm going to remove that one. You could change that. This one you could change to a percentage, I think, since it's the point version of it. And this one is just, what did I filtered it out by just shoes. So this, I would say like shoes search interest by term and state. So Michael Jordan, I don't know. Got to get some Sky Jordans there. Sweet. Basically did that here. So nice work on exploring the different map features. And this one's on sale. I'd really make it a little more complex than sale, but you've got all the tools to just drop that in, and you could even run it, and then you've already created the graphs and it all has the same variables, unless you did stuff like I did with the splitting of the variable. If it's the same as when you started, you can just click edit data source and edit the connection and find where you stored it and swap it out for a different one. So that's making it so you don't have to redo the graphs. You can just pull in, as long as the data is the same, another round there. So that is good with Revolve. We're going to close it out to another one. So one thing also in Tableau, we'll, I guess, do a couple little things here. You can right-click these tabs and change them different colors for a little bit better organization, or to let you know that things are like good and green and ready to use, and things that are maybe working on with yellow that aren't like finalized and validated. Another thing is you can do a dashboard. So on the bottom right, there is the new sheet, which you've probably been using. There's new dashboard, which is the second. And then there's a story mode that like walks through graphs and little story versions. But dashboards are super helpful. You can drop these different graphs on here like that and, work with the layouts. Hopefully your users have bigger desktops than that, so you can make them a little bit bigger. You can change the height and that kind of thing. You can add a title. So web analytics dashboard for the visits there. And maybe we do that one for the growth. So that's actually kind of a good start to a dashboard. You've got both the volume of the visits as well as the growth. So that kind of tells a little bit more of a story there. Can work with formatting to see what you think works best. That one has a lot of text, so maybe you need more there. Cool. You can also drop in images. So you can drop that in here. Let's see if we can do that. Maybe a little branding. Anchormetrics, fit image. There you go. Cool. You probably don't want that one. I'll leave it here and you can swap it out for your own company logo or whatever. There are lots of cool things you can do with dashboards. But one simple thing, you can then organize all these, click hide all sheets. So now you don't have all those tabs for these 4 graphs. They're all just wrapped up in there. Of course, you can right click on that and unhide all sheets to bring them back. So they're listed wherever we add them here. So we can hide all sheets and they're gone. That little teal color and you're good to go. Same goes without being in a dashboard. You can also hide sheets and stuff. Cool. All right. Revolve done. Let's save that. Save. Okay. All right. On running up here, we've got similar data, of course, since that's what we're all working on. It looks like we did do a split already on the brand name, so it's just a nice clean name there. We got the default colors, which does not make me happy, but that's where we're going because we haven't yet done the branding yet, so that's cool. We've got that assigned. I did not click apply, right? Oh, no. We've got Mac spinning screen of death. Thought I got rid of that with Windows. We'll see what happens. It was bound to happen on the YouTube live video, y'all. Have no idea if anyone's watching. Not gonna even look. Not gonna look at the chats. We're just gonna roll with it. Maybe we're gonna test out Command Q. I'll quit. Nothing. All right. Well, that one's thinking. We can look at Bagoo. I don't know what we got there. Bagoo versus fashion trend search term split 3. That is behind the scenes. That's not for a viewer. We've got month of the week. So interesting way of doing it. I like the style of graph. I'm not sure I want to see the search interests by week in this way. But great on exploring it. So, I mean, with the time series, let's start with the time series, and then you can maybe look at it in a different way. I'd probably use that. What did we have? We had the stacked square charts. I think for the time series one, we'll probably use the time here. Cool. And it's average search interest over the month or week. So interesting. So the overall was kind of, I guess the intention was to smooth it and to look at it by week. and it's doing the average for the week, which is good since we have daily data, so you wouldn't want to double count things. If you did exact date, you're going to get these fluctuations, so it kind of makes more sense to look at it, especially, you know, the longer it is, like if it's over 5 years, looking at it week to week, the fluctuations are just little fluctuations here and there. Like if you're looking at stock data and the price is going up 30% and down 20% in a day, it's really that like trend over time. So the simplified view can make sense here as well, as long as you make sure that you're not double counting it and you aren't here. So that's great. So we've got Bagu and fashion trends. That is pretty simple. So you're not comparing a brand versus another brand. You're comparing a brand versus someone searching for fashion trends. Yeah, I would probably come up with a different comparison. Like the different clothing items that they would be popular looking at might be interesting. Let's just go to Bagu. Let's see what's going on. I have no idea what that is. It's bags. Well, that should have been obvious to me. Cool. But we just did general fashion trends. So let's see what they call things. They're all bags. And this is interesting. We've got crescent bags, bowler bags, loaf bags. So I'm seeing where you're coming from with like the trends, but there's so many trends throughout fashion, and like from athletic fashion to athleisure to shoes, and bags are very specific. So I'd probably look at like that question of what trends are rising and lowering. So one side I like to look at stuff for that is Explosion Topics. Not the pro plan. See if they let us do anything here. Okay, maybe not. But they have a great email newsletter, and you can specifically look at that. There's got to be a way to get past the paywall. But you'll be able to see like crescent bags as something. Definitely you can run Google Trends for that. But I would search on Google Trends. Crescent bags. I don't know if that's a thing. There you go. I guess it was really popular past 24 hours. Let's do past 5 years. All right, crescent bags are on the move. And a bowler bag. This is where Taylor learns about fashion. I feel like that's actually going to get bowling people looking for bags too. No, like that is the problem with all of these searches. You really need to step back and think, is someone else going to search for that? If they search for Brooks, could be Brooks Brothers, could be Brooks Running, could be Brooks House of Pancakes. I don't know. Like the term needs to be specific enough for it to have meaning when you're comparing it. Is someone that's searching for that term trying to find you to sell the thing that you're trying to sell them? And so do you need to be bidding on some of those generic keywords or not? Or do you need to make it a little more specific? We'll go into that in search engine optimization in another video, but let's go with crescent bags, bowler bags, and a loaf bag in a pochette. Okay, I don't know. Pochette bag. I don't know. Pochette bag. Okay. And loaf bag. For bread loaves. It looks like a bread loaf. That's why they call it that, I guess. So interesting. So normally we pull all this data anyway into Tableau when you're doing this. But then you can focus down into just the last year as well. I may as well just pull the past 5 years. I'm going to go ahead and download that average search interest here, and in data, add new data source, pull in that file from here. Got my trends over time. So pulled it here. This is the Tableau data source tab. I figured out that was a date, not a date time. I figured out what all these terms are. And this is also where you can highlight all of these with Shift and click Pivot. And so the reason I did that was we had all of these different columns for each of the terms, but you can graph those individually in different rows. But if you want to graph them like in a line chart where they're all in that same space, then you need to pivot it this way. So it's just shifting the data to have the columns have that there. And it's going to give you that generic name. Like, don't put that on there. So this is the, I guess, type of bag. It's the category or whatever you need to rename it to. And that will just be, in this case, search interest. So now I can make a new graph, maybe. And we have the time. It puts it as year. We were going to do the month. And we were also going to filter out a range of dates. So maybe you could do a year and just click the last few to filter it down. And type of bag, maybe we do color, and then our search interest, drop it on here. And now we have a bit of a story. So this is actually super interesting. I'm going to make it the Arial one so you can see it pretty well. And I'm going to command on my keyboard, drop to the label. And that is a cool way of seeing the search interest over time. I know what months are. I don't need to see that. And we can call it bag, fashion bag trend, search interests 2023 to present. Cool. Let's get some fashion colors. I don't know, pinks, whatever. Let's go with that. And cool. All right, so I'm feeling better with that versus the trends. I mean, you have sustainability, fashion trends, sustainable fashion. Fashion trends, I think, is too generic. I'm going to exclude that from this, and I'm going to group these together, probably. And make sure we're on average. So if it wasn't average, it would double count those. But I think this helps you tell the story of, okay, so I don't know if Bagu's sustainable or not, but this is whatever that means. Now you have a story. You can say sometimes like, you know, we are riding the wave of this trend and our success mirrors that trend, or this is increasingly a trend and we should adopt it or you know, create products related to it, etc. So in this case, there was this massive spike in sustainability, fashion interest around then, and then I don't know, people just went on Temu and Shein to drop it down here, but it looks like it's bouncing up as well. So we're on week, but that was kind of the thing I was noticing in some of the other tabs. There was this interest in looking at things by month to see it a little more smoothed out. Because by week, maybe the fluctuations are caused by certain events that are more short term. So now you can see that story, but it's maybe bouncing back. So I don't know. So that's something to think about. And the rise there is a slow rise. So that might be an interesting point, whether it's sustainable and sustainable fashion or using another keyword like designer bags, and to see if their trends match that or not. So cool. All right, got some stuff there. We kind of went over some of these graphs before, the CIGR ones. This one's, you know, got some nice bolded different text there. You've got the categories. We were mostly talking about fashion and apparel. So I don't know, when you're doing all of these graphs, again, you're like the curator, you're the editor, you can choose what you want to cover or not. So what is relevant to you? Maybe it's just health, leisure and entertainment, fashion and apparel. And in this case, maybe that's what I would do. Maybe if I was in a different industry, I would just look at edible grocery and food service because some of those things are related, like, food delivery, restaurants, and other food related things, maybe beverage, maybe alcohol. Like, you might want to look at those in chunks, but this is kind of showing you overall the market. But let's go with just those. And I think we're good with that. Cool. Got the bar charts. We have it on fit width, which is another way to fit it on the screen. You can go fit height, and you can do the entire view. This one's got both bolded. Maybe the company is not, so we don't get the fatigue of looking at that. Again, we can sort it which way, like that, kind of like that. So VF Corp, the owner of all sorts of things, like what, North Face, Columbia, a whole bunch of, I don't know. They've got a ton of things there. So that private equity that owns a lot of different brands. So definitely got a massive market cap there compared to some of the others that are more independent for now. But cool. It's a good way to see it. And it's a good enough discussion to have compared to the tiny slices versus the others, and to have it listed out in the millions there. And of course, you can edit the colors. You could put all of these in a group. So maybe I put these in a group for another version of the slide. And you can see the difference between one versus all the others. You don't have to label all of those. You could take the label off. But that's one way to do it. You can make that. Actually, I just grouped them together. Let's see. Let's do that. We have oh yeah. Anyway, let's go with that. I like it. It's 2020 data, a little bit before, but at least it gives us something. Cool. What else we got? Global cities consumer IPX for fashion by country. Probably going to want to explain what that is. So explain what IPX is and what that number means. So definitely, yeah, got that. Of course, you can zoom in the map with, I'm using the scroller on my keyboard. You've got this thing up here, which you can have in the dashboards that are interactive as well. And it's got a little pen there, so you can reset it, and then you can pin it down to where you're talking about, like that, sort of. I think if it's just, it stays where I'm at. But looks good. Other than explaining that, I would also rename all of these with this. It's all data, and that's Statista data. It's not Statistica, it's Statista data. I would rename that to at least get rid of some of the other stuff. You want to know what it is, but it will be a lot easier to figure out later if it's not generic. And maybe like these Google Trends ones were by a certain keyword, and so you can do dash fashion trends or boot types, etc. So cool. This one, we have that same thing we can do with the country and company. And this is, so the accounting measure, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation set up here. So, okay, let's do that with country, company. Updated is the color. Got it. And company is the text. Okay. All right. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so company was still the old one there, but we have this here, and we already have the country there. So the company updated that, well, clearly the split was done from is great. So you've got that listed there, and you can see that. Although this is a rate, which I would not recommend combining in this way. It would be great for volume of sales and everything. But you're showing like they have negative 25% growth for Boohoo and negative 25 for ASOS. So it's like the average would make sense, but you're doing it by countries. So you would need that there for it to be accurate. So that's one way you could show the growth. Could do it this way. And, you know, actually, what if we didn't have company at all? And it's average, so we can do that. And could do color for country. I like the colors before. I don't like how Tableau resets that, but cool. So this is kind of fun. Since you have that data that has both country and company, now you can look at the average growth by country, which actually has a story to tell in addition to the story by the country and company. Or maybe you're just looking at companies themselves and that's the story. Got some null data there, so we probably want to filter that out. And the label probably doesn't need that. You could probably do that. And maybe change your formatting to standard or custom. I think percent, which won't work because we have the number there. But and that's, is it EBITDA or is, okay, so it's the compound annual growth of EBITDA. I would look back at the title of the Statista Excel file that you get, the first tab, and see exactly what it describes, and then explain it. But sounds good. You've got growth by country there, or by company there, by country here, and you're good to go. So very fun. All right, monthly website visits versus website growth. So cool. I'm hoping we get to some more of these dot charts. As a consultant, everyone that consults loves a little 2x2 matrix with some dot plots here. So that's the one in Tableau up here with the dots. We've got website visits here, website growth here. So this is kind of the one I recommend if you're going to look at the visits and the growth, whether it's like a website or an app. This is a nice way to see both scale and growth. So if it's really big but not growing, or it's small but growing fast, here's where you can see it. We've got the labels of all the companies here, and we've got a line at 0 for that. You could also do within the set, of course, you've got the average here. So we could do that for the pane. And so you've got now a 2x2 consulting style matrix. So high visits, high growth, that's a good spot to be in. That's the happy quadrant. High visits, low growth. It's not super low, but it's still not that much. That's a not great place to be in. Low visits and low growth, not good. So that's the sad quadrant. So high growth and low visits are opportunities that are popping up. So massive growth here for some of the smaller ones, and lots of opportunity to move those up that way. So maybe it is also when they're really small, it's kind of easy to grow from like 50 customers to 100 versus growing from 5 million to 10 million. But you get the idea. That's how you can kind of have that discussion. If you see like a BCG growth matrix with like cows and stuff, that's how they sort of talk about that as well. But very cool, easy way to see it. I wouldn't really change anything other than making sure that either in this graph or in the dashboard explains what the companies were that were selected. So this is fashion, e-commerce, or whatever is the subset. You can also look at what else you have here in the dimensions. So stage of growth, we have, let's see, we have, what else do we have on here? Let's do stage of growth as the color just to see that. Just for a second, let's make these really large and lower so we can see what stage of growth it thinks they're in. So this says these are at scale, and the orange, not too many mature ones on this list. These all do look like e-commerce sort of newer ones, but growth of the blue. So that's one way you can do it. So trying to show how you could do a different attribute, a different dimension, and add another layer under the graph, as long as it's not too much. I mean, there's color, there's size, and there's shape, and that is a lot for viewers sometimes. So I'd kind of experiment with that. This one's pretty simple since there's only 3. So things with 3 categories are pretty easy to digest there. But let's see what else they have. I don't know if there's anything else I want to. Has app. That might be interesting on the shape. I actually think that's a great story to talk about. So whether it's just an e-commerce website or an app, whether you need an app or not, there's an app for everything, which is both great and annoying. But does not have an app is the circle, which I don't know if it's true too. You need to check the data on all of these things, but like and this is website data compared to the apps. But the story you might have in a recommendation slide is like, hey, the website visits are growing like crazy. Like back in the day, Lululemon was very late to the e-commerce game, like extraordinarily late, because they wanted to wait and do it right and have that premium feel that the stores had at the time before they became a mall brand, and have tanked that. But they were looking at that massive growth of the websites, but they didn't have an app. So that's a good story to be like, hey, Alo has one. They have Alo Moves for the yoga practicing, which you can find me on in a class called The Method Flexibility. But the story here is like, should you have one, and what are your competitors doing? And you can kind of go down that path of marketing strategy and product strategy, and whether that's not whether that fits you or not. But needless to say, you can graph things by different dimensions, and then that helps you tell a little bit of the story. So I like several of the views here. Maybe I'll leave that in as an option, but very cool. Ooh, we got some colors. I'm excited now. We got social engagement rate percentage by name, but the name is a company name and the rate is a percentage. So since we only have one line per company probably in this data, doesn't matter, but I'm just going to take to average just in case. Of course, we could just say social engagement rates, but it's already in the title too. So we've got a lot of bold here. It depends on how much you like. Those aren't even on the list. I would filter them out, or drop the filter to, instead of all values, start at 0.5. So those other ones aren't relevant. Cool. So these are TikTok engagement rates. So social engagement rates, more TikTok engagement rate than overall social. That is the title that was losing the sheet name again. So, okay. Or who or which fashion e-com brand leads on TikTok? And the answer to that's pretty obvious. And so this one does both the length of the bar, the label, and the color as the engagement rates. That's one way to do it. Let's see what we have with social engagement rate. Okay. Is that TikTok? I think it's just social. So maybe it is just engagement rates. So we're going to change that. I don't think that variable, we've got a lot of measures here that are on the list, but that we're not using. So that might confuse things a little bit. So I'm going to, what are we graphing that by? We just have social engagement rate percentage there, and then we have measure values all dropped on there. Let's get rid of that. That's confusing things. But we could use two different things. We have Instagram followers and we have engagement rate. So maybe we use followers instead for the, we only have one that has data for the followers. So that's not going to help us. I want something that's more of a fixed thing. So we're going to just choose, not much good data there. We're going to stick with engagement rate, but normally I like the, something like volume or totals as the bar, and then you would do a rate on the top of it with the engagement rate. But this one doesn't have a ton of other things to go there. You could maybe range it by like business model or something, and that would be one way to do it. So this one, I only have one in C2C, but some different things you could explore with. Meaningful engagement per post over time by brand. That's a mouthful, but I like the caption there. You can always edit it down to get the essentials. And some I would probably have as a talking point, and some is like a key takeaway that's like a shortened line. So this definitely reads like a part of a slide where you'd have that. Let's see, over the month on Instagram. Meaningful engagement is a metric. Yeah. Let's see what we can do here. And it's, oh boy. Okay, let's try this. Meaningful engagements over time by. So what is meaningful engagement per post? Let's check out the calculation. Instagram post likes, Instagram post comments divided by the number of posts. Okay, so you're saying likes and comments are really important. Definitely are. Do we have shares on here? Shares is like a massive thing. We don't have it for Insta. I wonder if they count that in the meta as a Facebook post share in the data. I don't think so in Rival IQ, but nevertheless, I can see why I didn't include it. So basically, it's like engagement per post. Okay. And so that's, I mean, I guess there's non-meaningful engagement, but like some things do have a higher weight than others. Obviously, shares are really a strong signal versus just a like, versus a watch and a rewatch. So we've got this in there. Engagement per post over time by brand, March 2026. Oh, yes. Okay. That is why, because we have it weighted. We've got doubling for comments. Okay, cool. Excellent way to describe it. Giving, that was 2x importance to comments. So now you know how efficient they are at driving meaningful engagement by posts. So of course, looking at everything, if you didn't do it by post, then you do know like the total numbers of engagement, which shows your reach, shows your audience. That's great. But having it per post tells you a little bit more about the performance of the posts that you're creating and what you should do more of or stop doing or continue doing and stuff like that. So great. Seeing a lot of the formatting and the colors and the annotation setup there. And cool. Engagement per posts. And you can see really quick, COS had some crazy engagement per post on March 29th, 2026. So definitely have that as a follow-up slide. You could probably pull that message onto detail. And now, what happened to that? Okay, did not drop it on the right thing. Insert message. Okay. And there you go. The message is blank. So I'm guessing that's an image. So I don't know. Data check, but that's where it would be. Very cool. Good post, good graph, good game. And Facebook reactions over time. Very cool. Yeah, I think it's tough because there's not a lot of platforms that have a ton of different ways to track reactions, and not a huge Facebook fan for a lot of reasons, but the like loves and angries and wows do make it a little bit more interesting to graph, to figure out kind of the context of what's going on. And we've got a lot of average lines. So you got likes, wows, loves. It's interesting to see when they diverge, and then there might be some interesting outliers here. So we got a ton of wows for Vera Bradley on March 25th. So there might be a good story there. I'd probably keep it just to like maybe 2 of these. You got loves, likes. These are pretty similar. Maybe I just go with loves and wows, or maybe just likes and wows. And so in this case, since we're graphing it by the individual graphs, you can just pull out that from there. The other way to graph these is doing that like measure names, and then you do the measure names instead of 1, and then you do the measure values instead of the variables there. And you can, I really don't want to do it, but that's how you can delete all the ones you don't want down here, and just focus on those, because then you can do where's company name? And yikes, but you get the idea a little bit. What is going on with these? Some of the likes and angries and the company names and measure values. Well, my brain's fried. There's a better way to do that. But anyway, we're going to go back to the other way. We have it set up. Cool. All right, let's stick with that one. Yes, that was really fast. There you go. Facebook. This one would be like, what is the wow factor? Something like that. But we got a good start to a caption there for sure. Cool. Posting frequency by company, another nicely designed thing. Again, I mean, you can have company name up there. I don't think it's necessary. Posting frequency. So that's posting frequency per day. Cool. Let's look at that. Post length by distinct posts per day. Yep, looks good. So, yeah, that's a little classic. How many times do you post per day? You know, does that help at a certain level, or is there fatigue at a certain level? So like whatever serves your audience needs and strategy, up to you, but it is interesting discussion to choose what makes sense. So clearly some people are posting quite a bit more than others. So very cool, sort of descending, no notes, all good. Post overview by company. Got a engagement totals. You can see the outlier CLS on Instagram. We've got it by platform as well. So a lot of different ways, obviously, to show this. So this one kind of has a combined view of the platforms. You can see that too. Could make that a different shape as well. Maybe not, but up to you. We do have a lot of that outlier is definitely killing this. So you could start with this, and then on the next one, you can say like minus that thing, so you can zoom in a little bit further on what's going on for sure. That should help as well. You know, I'd also just always experiment with like this. Maybe we also pull channel in here and then like sort it here, so you can see if you were just talking about Instagram and about that, you can then see what's going on there by company. But always like play around in Tableau, move it to just company. And now you can see the view of COS across all the platforms versus the smaller ones here as well. So no harm in like duplicating like 5 times and only then choosing the 1 or 2 for your story, or just rapid fire going through those slides where you're like, here's all the companies by channel. Here we're just talking about Instagram. Here we're talking about YouTube versus TikTok. Keep that work you've done on like a simple graph and turn that into like 3 minutes of talking about it as you like dive down and do those different comparisons. So it's a great example of like one graph that could definitely be 5, which it figured out here, which is great. So now you're looking at that outlier, which is perfect. That shows that like, hey, the thing that's out there that's different, you're going to get that question, may as well address it now, or at least be ready for it. And perfect. It's explaining why it's likely due to the real featuring a celebrity at a runway event. So, I mean, whether that's causal or not, it's pretty likely that that was the case. And so now you have something powerful. You know what to recommend that they do more or less of. And in this case, maybe at a future runway event, they might actually get some value out of having a celebrity because it drives that engagement. If that engagement is positive enough to lead to better brand satisfaction, conversions, referrals, or whatever else you're trying to get to happen, they're not just liking the post and never buying anything ever throughout their entire life. You want that customer lifetime value to be pretty valuable. So cool. All right. Well, Bagu, I think we're good with you. We're going to close that out and see if we can pick up another one. Rare Beauty. Is not wanting to move. Okay. Wait. We did rare already, right? Yeah. So we got rare and Bagu. And let's see what we got. Mac Mini is dying over here. We're probably going to wrap with that. I'm going to give the other volunteers a couple of tips too with their files. So if you didn't get to see yours completed right now, rest assured I will get some tips to you as well. But thank you so much for those volunteers. Hopefully you learned a little bit on how to visualize a little bit better. Think about good titles, think about what the viewer can really receive that's not too overwhelming, that then focuses them on things that you want them to see, to make your point, to make your recommendations, so that you can be successful and thrive and make some cool graphs in the process. So very cool there. Thanks y'all for tuning in. I can't even close the browser, so we're good. All right. Well, let's stop sharing screen there. Thank you very much for tuning in to Thinkermetrics Live. Maybe we'll do this in the future if anyone has any actual comments, feedbacks. Happy to hear it, but let's do this again soon. Thanks, Thinkermetrics fam.